Today's the day we put this pathetic little operation of yours to rest for good." My younger brother Leo announced it to the entire bankruptcy courtroom, adjusting his cufflinks with the serene confidence of a man who'd already cashed the check on my downfall. My mother and father watched from the front row, her face a mask of performative sorrow, his a sculpture of stern disapproval. I stood behind the defendant's table, saying nothing, letting their attorney lay out the fabricated claims, waiting for the precise instant their entire world would invert. But why did Judge Aris Thorne suddenly stop speaking? His pen hovering above the paperwork, his gaze locking onto the corporate name typed on the front page. "Counsel, approach the bench, now." Both lawyers moved forward. The judge's voice dropped to a low, urgent murmur I had to strain to catch. "Is this the same Vertex Sentinel Solutions that was just awarded the $200 million Pentagon contract, the one Forbes profiled?" Leo's attorney started to mumble a response I couldn't decipher. Judge Thorne looked up, his eyes finding mine with an expression of pure astonishment, rapidly hardening into fury. "We are pausing this proceeding. I need to see exhaustive verification of all submitted materials immediately, because what I have before me is either the most negligent filing in my 25-year career or a deliberate attempt to commit fraud in this courtroom." My brother's smug grin began to falter at the edges. I started Vertex Sentinel Solutions 9 years ago in a rented storage unit with $4,000 I'd saved waiting tables. The Vance family didn't believe in storage units. We believed in legacy. My father, Robert Vance, operated a thriving commercial real estate empire. My brother Leo was being polished to inherit the throne. My younger sister Fiona had married into a dynasty of old wealth and dedicated her life to philanthropic galas and exclusive social registers. And I, Isabel, the forgotten middle child, the perpetual letdown, had tossed aside my MBA from Stanford to chase what my father termed tinkering with gadgets. "National security infrastructure," I'd corrected him. He'd snorted from behind his mahogany desk. "That's a technical skill, not an enterprise. Find a proper career, Isabel. Join a hedge fund. Marry someone suitable. This venture of yours has no future. The sector is poised for explosive growth. You're 23. You know nothing about constructing an empire. You'll collapse, and then you'll come crawling back for us to salvage the wreckage. I won't collapse. They all claim that. You will." I walked out of his office and never sought his endorsement again. The initial 6 years were a relentless grind. I survived on instant noodles and exhaustion, working 100-hour weeks, learning the Byzantine world of government, contracting through costly, humbling errors. I trusted the wrong partners, missed crucial deliverables, faced a lawsuit that devoured my meagre capital. My family observed from their gilded sidelines, anticipating the implosion they'd forecast. "Still fiddling with your computers?" Leo would inquire during strained holiday dinners, his voice slick with patronizing concern. "That little project of yours still keeping you busy," Dad would add. "We're concerned for you, darling," Mom would say, which always translated to, "We're humiliated by you." I stopped showing up for family gatherings after year 4. The effort required to justify my existence was energy better spent creating it, and create it I did. Vertex developed advanced encryption frameworks for secure military data channels, systems that could identify and counter cyber attacks in nanoseconds. We landed our first modest government grant in year 5, a more substantial contract in year 6. By year 8, we employed 55 people, generated $15 million in annual revenue, and were whispered about as the most agile new player in the defense tech arena. The $200 million deal arrived 8 weeks ago, a multi-phase agreement with the Department of Defense to deploy our technology across 4 branches. The pact that would catapult Vertex from a notable startup to a key industry partner. Forbes wrote the cover story. Trade journals dissected our methods. Suddenly, my inbox flooded with meeting requests from venture capital firms. My family remained oblivious. I'd meticulously kept my achievements quiet, conducting all public business under my married name, Isabel Reed. The few relatives who might have seen news about Vertex Sentinel never linked I Reed, CEO, with the daughter they'd written off as a lost cause. I preferred the anonymity. Their applause was a currency I no longer dealt in, but their meddling, it seemed, was a tax I still had to pay. The bankruptcy summons arrived a month after the contract announcement. Leo had filed it, asserting that Vertex owed him $2.5 million from a seed investment he claimed to have made in year 3. The filing alleged I'd breached our repayment agreement, that the company was drowning in debt and required court protection for creditors. It was fiction, every single line. Leo had never contributed a cent to Vertex. He'd never shown interest beyond derision. The attached documents were forgeries, promissory notes I'd never endorsed, financial reports bearing no resemblance to reality. It was fraud, blatant and clumsy. The kind of fraud that could strangle a company in legal limbo, freezing assets, terrifying investors, endangering government partnerships that demanded fiscal solidity. I contacted my attorney, Mara Chen, within the hour. "They're attempting to drag you into bankruptcy with counterfeit paperwork," she stated, after scanning the documents. "It's shockingly reckless. Any serious audit will unravel this in a day, but in the interim, the filing creates complications that could delay your Pentagon contract rollout." "That's precisely the objective," I replied. "Leo knows I've secured something major. He wants to cripple it." "How would he know the details?" "Our mother's sister works at a firm that handles some of our regulatory paperwork. She must have seen a memo and mentioned it at a Sunday dinner." I let out a long breath. They don't comprehend the magnitude of what I've built. They just know I have a government deal and decided to intervene. But why try to obliterate it? Because my victory proves their judgment was flawed. For some people, that's an unbearable truth. The hearing was set for a Tuesday morning. I arrived early, dressed in the elegant, authoritative style I'd adopted. Tailored, serious, commanding respect without begging for it. Mara joined me at our table with 4 crates of evidence documenting Vertex's true financial health. Leo arrived with our parents, making a spectacle of it. He wore a suit from his luxury brand endorsements. Mom had chosen mournful shades, as if for a vigil. Dad wore the grim expression of a man whose dynasty was being sullied. They didn't look at me, not a glance. I was the malfunction to be corrected, not a person to be acknowledged. "Time to accept reality, Isabel," Leo said to his lawyer, his voice carrying across the quiet room. "Should have taken Dad's offer years ago." The gallery held a handful of observers. None knew they were about to watch a spectacular legal detonation. Judge Aris Thorne entered. I'd studied his record, 25 years on the bench, renowned for meticulous detail and contempt for courtroom deception. If anyone would spot Leo's charade instantly, it was him. The session opened with Leo's lawyer presenting the petition. He described the phantom debt, the alleged default, the urgent need for judicial oversight. "Your Honour, the defendant has willfully evaded repaying a significant familial obligation, funneling funds into a fundamentally unviable enterprise." Judge Thorne raised a hand. "The company, Vertex Sentinel Solutions, headquarters in Arlington, Virginia." "Yes, Your Honour." He glanced at his monitor, typed a brief query, and then went completely motionless. That's when he summoned the lawyers forward. The hushed conversation at the bench stretched for several tense minutes. I watched Leo's assurance disintegrate in real time. His attorney's posture sagged. My father hunched forward, his smugness melting into confusion. Finally, Judge Thorne spoke clearly for the room. "We will recess for 45 minutes. In that time, I expect both sides to assemble all supporting documentation." "Counsel for the petitioner," he said, piercing Leo's lawyer with a glacial stare. "I cannot overstate the importance of verifying every page you've entered into this record. Should I discover fraudulent submissions, the repercussions will be swift and severe." The gavel fell. Leo scurried to his attorney. "What is it? What did he say?" I used the break to organise our proof. Mara laid out the exhibits across our table. Genuine financials showing strong revenue and robust reserves. The redacted Pentagon agreement, clearly legitimate. Confirmation letters from investors, annual audits, 9 years of immaculate business records. And then, the digital forensic report on Leo's filing. Experts had examined his loan agreements. The files were created 10 days prior. The metadata was a roadmap of deception. The signatures were obvious tracings. When court resumed, Judge Thorne returned. His demeanour changed. "I conducted independent verification during the recess," he announced. "Vertex Sentinel Solutions is not, by any metric, a failing entity. It appears to be an exceptionally prosperous defence technology firm that recently secured one of the most significant cybersecurity awards this term." He turned to Leo's lawyer. "Would you care to explain why you've petitioned for bankruptcy protection for a corporation displaying zero financial distress?" The lawyer fumbled with his notes. Your Honour, my client provided documentation of an outstanding liability, documentation that, upon even preliminary inspection, conflicts starkly with the company's public financial disclosures and recent press. Judge Thorne looked to me. Ms. Reid, or should I say Ms. Vance, given the petitioner is your sibling, your response to these allegations? I stood. Your Honour, the liability does not exist. The investment never occurred. Every document submitted by my brother is a fabrication. He has no history with Vertex Sentinel. This petition is an act of sabotage, motivated by embarrassment over my accomplishments. That is an extraordinary claim. I have extraordinary proof, I nodded to Mara, who began distributing copies. These are our authenticated financial records, audited and sealed. This is a forensic analysis of the petitioner's documents, demonstrating their creation date was last week, using template formats that didn't exist years ago. And this, I said, holding up a final sheet, is a chronicle of my brother's public and private dismissals of my work over the past 9 years, establishing a clear pattern of hostility. Leo jumped to his feet. This is insane. She's my sister. I have a right to what she owes. What do I owe, Leo? I asked, my voice calm and level. Name the date of the transfer. Specify the account you used. Produce one piece of corroborating evidence that doesn't dissolve under a microscope. He couldn't. There was only envy and resentment, wrapped in a flimsy legal package. Judge Thorne examined our materials for a long, silent half-hour. The air in the room grew thick. Leo's lawyer looked ill. My parents' theatrical grief had vanished, replaced by a slow dawning horror. Finally, the judge spoke. I have reviewed the evidence. The digital forensic report is conclusive. The metadata proves the petitioner's key documents were generated recently, not years ago as alleged. The financials provided by the defendant illustrate a thriving debt-free corporation. He turned his focus to Leo. Mr. Vance, this petition is dismissed. However, your involvement with this court is not concluded. Submitting a fraudulent bankruptcy filing is a federal offence. I am referring this matter to the United States Attorney for investigation into possible perjury and wire fraud. Leo's face lost all colour. Your Honour, there's been a terrible mistake. There is no mistake. You presented forged instruments to this court. You alleged non-existent debts. You attempted to use judicial process to cripple a successful company through deception. He removed his glasses. Are you aware that obstructing a Department of Defense contractor can incur additional federal penalties? The government frowns profoundly on threats to national security assets. National security? It's her little tech hobby. Your sister's hobby provides essential cybersecurity to United States Armed Forces. Compromising it isn't merely fraud, it is a potential national security concern. He looked back to me. Ms. Reid, my apologies for this court's time being squandered by this groundless action. Your firm's standing will not be impaired by this proceeding, and the record will explicitly note the petition's fraudulent nature. Thank you, Your Honour. Case dismissed. The aftermath was pandemonium. Federal officers approached Leo and his counsel about the criminal referral. My parents attempted a quiet exit, but I caught my father's eye at the door. His expression was a complex ruin. Perhaps shame, perhaps rage, perhaps just the shock of a plan catastrophically backfiring. Robert! Eleanor! I kept my tone flat. I assume you were aware of this scheme. Dad turned. Isabel, this was Leo's plan. We just supported him. You sat in the front row, endorsing him while he tried to demolish my life's work. Don't pretend you were spectators. We thought we were helping, Mom blurted. Helping whom? Your son commit felonies? Or yourselves feel vindicated for underestimating me for nearly a decade? Mom stepped closer. We didn't know it was fraudulent, Leo said. He said the company was failing. Leo told you what you wanted to hear, and you believed him because the alternative, that you were wrong about me, was too painful to accept. I gathered my files. The $200 million contract is real. The 55 people who rely on Vertex for their livelihoods are real. The technology safeguarding our military communications is real. You tried to annihilate all of it because my success disrupted your narrative. Isabel, please, I'm finished. Whatever legal consequences Leo faces are his to bear. Whatever stories you tell yourselves are yours to live with. Do not contact me again. Do not pretend we share a bond. Family doesn't fabricate evidence to bankrupt one another. I walked out of the courthouse and never glanced back, the federal inquiry moved with startling speed. Leo's lawyer, confronting professional ruin, cooperated completely. He admitted Leo had brought him the scheme, insisting Vertex was a doomed embarrassment that needed to be euthanized before it tarnished the family name. The lawyer had been willfully blind, accepting his client's word without due diligence. But the fraud was Leo's creation. Charges were filed within 2 months. Bankruptcy fraud, perjury, attempted interference with a national defense contractor. Leo faced a potential 15-year sentence. My father mobilized his contacts and a significant portion of his wealth to negotiate a plea bargain, reducing it to 40 months in a low-security prison. Leo would serve time, be removed from the family business, and carry a felony record permanently. The real estate firm endured, but Dad was forced to relinquish day-to-day control. The scandal of a son convicted of federal fraud repelled the high-stakes clients his empire was built upon. The last I heard, he acts as a nebulous advisor while actual executives run operations. Mom sent a letter half a year later. It was crammed with excuses and apologies that weren't apologies. We never intended for this outcome. Blood should forgive. You must see our side. I didn't reply. Vertex Sentinel celebrated its 10th anniversary last quarter. We now have over 200 employees. Our Pentagon commitments have expanded to nearly $400 million over the next 7 years. We've launched a second R&D center in Washington State and are scouting locations for a third. Forbes did a follow-up feature called The Startup That Endured a Family's Betrayal. I granted one interview about the case, phrasing it carefully to focus on legal integrity over personal drama. The reporter asked why I thought my brother did it. Some individuals would rather demolish a monument than admit they misread the blueprint, I said. Do you have any relationship with your family now? I have a wonderful relationship with the family I created, my team, my partners, my husband, the people who stood by me when all I had was a storage unit and a stubborn idea. My biological relatives made their choice. I've made mine. The interview ended there. Some inquiries don't require elaborate answers. Last month, a letter came from my sister, Fiona. She'd always floated above the family strife, too invested in her social ledger to notice mine. But apparently, the scandal had stained her standing in her elite circles. People gossiped about her felon brother, her complicit parents. I know you likely want nothing from any of us, she wrote, but I need you to know I never agreed with their treatment of you. I was too timid to speak up, but I always knew you'd prove them wrong. It was a semi-apology diluted with self-preservation. She wanted to rebrand herself as the secretly supportive sister. I wrote back a single line. Support offered in silence when it carried a cost is merely complicity. But I acknowledge your note. I meant it. I didn't absolve her, but I recognize the overture. Change has to begin somewhere. My son was born 4 months ago. We named him Arthur after my grandfather, the only Vance who ever expressed faith in me. He passed before Vertex became what it is, but he told me once, holding my hand, that he saw a titan in the making. I hold Arthur in the nursery of the home I bought with my own earnings, in a community I chose, light years from the people who tried to break me. I whisper to him about grit and vision, about creating things that last, about discerning between those who build you up and those who seek to tear you down. Your grandparents, I told him last night, though he's too young to understand, they won't be part of your story. That isn't vengeance, it's preservation. You deserve to be surrounded by those who see your light, not those who need your darkness. He stared up at me with those unfocused newborn eyes. You will do magnificent things, Arthur, and I will be there cheering the loudest. That is what family truly means, not shared DNA, but shared faith. I placed him in his crib and watched him sleep. This tiny human who would never know the family that rejected his mother, he would know the family that chose her. That is sufficient. More than sufficient. They dragged me into bankruptcy court expecting to finally coronate me as the failure they'd always prophesied. Instead, they exposed themselves as counterfeiters in every sense. The judge recognized my company's name because we had constructed something worthy of recognition, of defense, of acclaim. They believed they were terminating an embarrassment. They were attempting to dismantle a $200 million legacy. That courtroom wasn't their victory lap, it was their unmasking. And now, while Leo serves his sentence and my parents recede into obscurity, Vertex Sentinel Solutions continues to ascend. We continue to build. We continue to demonstrate that the most formidable force in the universe isn't familial doubt, It is unyielding personal resolve. If thanks for listening.